Hey guys, today we're at the zoo and I'm going to teach you about aperture. So one of the most important things about aperture is it determines the style of your photograph. It does two things. One, it determines how much light is let into the lens, and it also determines your depth of field. It's got mask beard. So one of the important parts about aperture is it controls how much light comes into the camera. So the bigger the aperture, the more light comes in. The smaller the aperture, the less light comes in. But here's the confusing part. The bigger aperture is the smaller number, and the smaller aperture is the bigger number. So an f2.8 is going to be a bigger aperture than an f22. Very confusing.
Kind of like a miniature poodle. The big one must be so tiny. I wonder if pygmy hippopotamuses can hold their breath as long as regular hippopotamuses.
Because of Bongo Bongo?
Like 3!
Ooh,
but I liked that song.
Ooh,
Please stop.
Bongo Bongo.
I will ask your mom for embarrassing stories when you're 3 and tell her everything.
So sometimes aperture is also referred to as your f-stop, and it can be found on your lens. And usually the number that's represented there is the fastest f-stop that lens has. So like an f1.8, 1.8 is faster than an f22. So the smaller the number, the faster. So the zoo is always fun, but it's always super exhausting. So aperture also controls the depth of field. In basic terms, that just means the area of the picture that is in focus from front to back. The smaller the number, the less of a focus area. So when these can get really small, especially if you're shooting macro like I like to do, some lenses are really fast, like an f.95, and those have a very small depth of field, very small focus area. The larger the f-stop, like an f22, has a bigger focus area. So to put this in a practical situation, if I'm shooting at night, I want a larger f-stop because it lets in more light. So the larger f-stop, bigger hole, smaller number. And the opposite is true if I'm shooting during the day. I want a smaller f-stop, larger number, smaller hole, less light. This is so that my image doesn't get overexposed. Similarly, if I want my subject to be in focus, but I want my background to be out of focus, I need a faster f-stop, smaller number, larger hole. Now if you remember, the aperture has to do with the amount of light that's let into the camera. And this directly relates to how we expose our shots, which leads into the next video, which is going to be about shutter speed. So to properly expose our shot, we need to make sure the right amount of light is coming into the camera, which the aperture controls how much light is let into the camera, but the shutter speed controls how long the aperture is open. But we'll get more into that in the next video. So make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. New episodes are going to be released every Wednesday. And if you guys have questions, make sure to leave them down in the comments and we'll try to get to them. And as always, thanks again. I'm out.